Hello, everybody. On behalf of the Citizens for a Better Grand Forks, we would like to thank all of you for coming tonight. And to our invited guests, thank you for agreeing to bring your knowledge and expertise to this meeting. A special thank you to the Mayor and City Council for your support in sponsoring this Community Hall meeting. In planning this meeting, our group made every effort to invite everyone we thought might have a vested interest in the type of social support services that are being delivered, as well as how they are being delivered. We are pleased that our efforts have been rewarded by having here this evening wide representation from a variety of community groups, social service organizations, business, and citizens groups, both municipal and provincial levels of government, and individual members of the community. Although every attempt has been made to be as inclusive as possible in terms of invited guests, at least a couple of our major participants were unable to attend. Unfortunately, we have received notice from Jim Harrison of the RCMP that he could not attend tonight due to an unforeseen family emergency, and we wish him well with regard to that. Although having initially accepted our invitation, the representative for the Interior Health has also canceled, citing more pressing commitments. Bylaw enforcement has also declined our invitation, citing that any bylaw enforcement concerns should be directed to council. Nevertheless, it is our hope that we move forward this evening and treat each other with respect, and know that while we may not agree on all the issues, that we will be open to hearing concerns and listening to solution-based ideas. Citizens for a Better Grand Forks is committed to working collaboratively in the event of fairness and balance in our community, and we hope that this commitment is shared by all of you. We would like you to know that if you don't get a chance to speak this evening, or you have any further suggestions for how we move forward within a more cooperative and transparent decision-making process, please fill out the card at the table over there and put it in the suggestion box. Also, if you would like to be more involved with the Citizens for a Better Grand Forks, we would love to have your help. And we encourage you to leave your name and contact information on a card and put it in the suggestion box as well. Thank you. At this point, I would like to introduce our moderator for the evening, Mr. Michael Strukoff. Michael has had a long history in our community as a moderator and facilitator, and I'd like to personally thank him for accepting our invitation to put his skills to work in moderating the meeting this evening. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Michael Strukoff.
Thank you, Darren. I understand why you were taken aback. That darn projector's directly in your eyes. You can't see anybody. Okay. The meeting tonight is broken up into several parts. And I think you've seen the agenda above you. So the first simple part is going to be some introductions. And I'm going to be introducing the panel just so you know who the person is and the organization they represent. Then each one of them is going to get an opportunity to speak about their organizations and the services they provide. Around 7:30, all going well, we were going to have an informal question and answer session, which basically means members of the audience are going to have an opportunity to have to question any of the panelists. We'll talk about how we're going to conduct that when we get to that point. At roughly 8:15 or so, there's going to be a specific question that's going to be displayed on the screen, and we're going to ask each of our panelists to address that question briefly, and then we're going to have an opportunity maybe for some audience input onto that issue as well. And then roughly at 9 o'clock, we're going to be wrapping up this evening. We have a lot of people here, a lot of people with probably ideas, experiences, some good, some bad. So we are going to have some rules around how we're going to conduct ourselves and try to give everybody equal opportunity to make themselves known and to answer or ask questions. And we'll talk about that when we get to those specific parts. But we do want to use our time wisely. 2 hours is probably as long as anybody can take it in these very uncomfortable seats that our school district provides us with. So with that done, I'm going to first of all just introduce the panel. You just need to kind of raise your hand so people know who we're referring to. And it's again by alphabetical order of the organization you represent. So first on my list is Joseph Reiner from Ankors. Ann Howard from BC Housing Corporation. Darren Pratt. Is he here this evening? There he is. Darren Pratt, Boundary Family Services Society. Svetlana is the primary health care and registered nurse with the Boundary Health Care Co-op and recently elected president, just a little plug, for Flippin' Fun Gymnastics. Diana Darling, who just spoke, Citizens for a Better Grand Forks. Amber Esavoliv, is she here? There she is. Oh. I'm behind about 10 years, aren't I? I knew Amber as a student, by her maiden name. Amber represents the Downtown Business Association. Mayor Brian Taylor, and joining Brian are 5 councillors who are in our audience. Maybe you folks could just pick up your hands too. Yep, they're here to listen as well. 4, one's missing. Louise Hecht, Warming Center Subcommittee. Melissa Scholder, Whispers of Hope. Here. And in the audience we have Doug Dunbar, the church ministerial. He's in attendance to come and listen. Doug, are you here? Maybe not. Okay. So these are our panelists, and I have selected an order for speaking about their organizations. It's going to be a surprise for most of them, the order they're going to be called on. But they have been given a notice in advance that they're going to have this opportunity to speak, and hopefully they've prepared their thoughts. There's a microphone on the table, on each of the 2 tables, and so the speakers are going to be asked to share the mic. And so we're going to start off this part of our program with Amber from the Downtown Business Association starting it off.
Hi. Hello. Thank you all for coming. Hello. Yes. Thank you all for coming. My name is Amber Asavlov. I am the chairperson of the Grand Forks Downtown Business Association. The GFDBA's mandate is to support a vibrant and economically viable downtown that fosters a safe, family-friendly environment for everyone. Our immediate focus is on economic recovery, and our members are concerned about the impact that social supports located downtown will have on the business community. Thank you.
Okay, could you pass that to Svetlana now? She's going to be the second speaker. Svetlana?
Hi, everybody. Hi, everybody. Thank you for inviting me. I did invite our entire staff, but I'm here to represent the Boundary Health Care Co-op. So I just want to take this opportunity just to educate what is the healthcare co-op and who am I. So I'm a registered nurse. I'm specifically a primary care registered nurse. So primary care nurses focus on disease prevention and health promotion. I work for the Boundary Healthcare Co-op, and that is a partnership between Interior Health and our local physician community. That's me.
Darren Pratt from Boundary Family Services Society.
Good evening. My name is Darren Pratt. I'm the Executive Director of Boundary Family Services. So we have a long-standing history in community of providing a wide variety of family support services, from prenatal all the way through to family support for teens, adolescents, as well as adults. We were asked in December of 2018 to explore the possibility of taking on a lateral move into housing, and that included both the proposed 2nd Street and 19th Street developments. So that's why we're here this evening. Thank you.
Joseph Reiner, if you can introduce your organization.
Good evening. My name is Joseph Reiner and I work with Ankors. I am the West Kootenay Prevention, Harm Reduction, and Education Coordinator. So I work here in the Boundary, East and West Kootenay regions. I work with multiple levels of government, municipal, provincial, and federal, to try and address the social determinants of health. So that can be a whole range of things, but basically my focus is to educate and work toward services that are inclusive and supportive of all persons, dealing with anything from mental health to substance use issues to housing, poverty. All of it is included in my mandate.
Louise Hecht from the Warming Center Subcommittee.
Hi, I'm Louise Hecht, and I am on the Warming Center Subcommittee. Whispers of Hope actually is providing the administrative services for the Warming Center, and so it actually comes under our umbrella. It came together very quickly when we came to realize that it was December and there was a lot of people with no warm place to be. And what we first thought was going to be just kind of a 24-hour coffee shop very quickly actually became a shelter. And we're really happy with the work that's been done up there this year, and we are happy for the opportunity to come here tonight and speak to it.
Thank you. So, Melissa Scholga from Whispers of Hope.
Thank you so much. My name is Melissa Scholga, and I am the Center Coordinator for Whispers of Hope Benevolence Association. We operate a thrift store as well as a community kitchen. Unfortunately, our kitchen hasn't been open for just over a year now, but as you all may know, we do have a new location on 5th Street that we are renovating and working to open up. Our mission is to alleviate the suffering of those who may be impoverished by providing community support, nourishment, and essentials in a safe and welcoming environment. And we're very happy to now be working with even more groups, whether it be the DBA or the Citizens for a Better Grand Forks, to ensure that we're providing the best service that we can in our community. Thanks.
Okay, Ann Howard from BC Housing.
Good evening. I'm the Regional Director for BC Housing, and our mission is to provide or make a positive difference in people's lives throughout community by providing affordable, safe housing. And in this community, we do that for over 135 people right now, and spend about $1.5 million in this community doing that. I'm involved, and I have been involved in housing for the last 40 years. I started in a nonprofit organization and quickly realized that if people don't have homes, they really don't have anywhere to go. And so providing housing became my passion. And I truly believe that every one of us recognizes the importance of having a home. If we don't have a home, we're in survival mode. All we can think about is how we are going to survive that day. If we have a home, we can start living rather than surviving. That's why I'm in this job. That's why I really believe that what we do as BC Housing, providing housing for seniors, providing housing for families, providing housing for people who are living in violent situations in their own homes, a way to escape from that, providing housing for people who are disabled, providing people who are our sisters, brothers, neighbors, colleagues in our communities. That is why I'm here tonight. I'm here to speak to the issues of housing, how we can do better. Yes, we can learn lots of things, and I'm still learning. After 40 years, I'm learning. Because things are changing in communities. Things are not the same as they were 40 years ago. 40 years ago, if we thought we were going to build a housing for families, we would quite literally get egged. And now it's welcome in communities because people know that it's important to have affordable, safe housing for all levels of people, whether you're making a lot of money or whether you're not making any at all. It is so important because without housing, we have nothing.
Thank you, Anne. And now Diana Darling, representing Citizens for a Better Grand Forks.
Hello again. So, Citizens for a Better Grand Forks. We started simply as downtown area property and business owners concerned about the negative impact we felt would result from the operation of the Whispers of Hope Community Kitchen on 5th Street. Many of us were unaware of this venture until we learned of it from a Facebook post one Friday. A meeting of area residents and business owners was subsequently organized, during which participants spoke of their deep concerns about the location and the likely negative impact on the downtown core, our parks, city revenue, and yes, our property values and personal safety. We needed a name, and Citizens for a Better Grand Forks was born. Later on, we became aware from talking with people around town that many had no idea of Whispers of Hope's plans. So we decided to create and distribute a petition to get a sense of how many people were opposed to the location of the community kitchen. As petitions were circulated and later gathered, we saw that there were indeed opposition to the operation of the Whispers of Hope Community Kitchen in the downtown area. This opposition has in turn led to our group garnering a lot of further support. While individuals within Citizens for a Better Grand Forks obviously have a variety of opinions, I believe it is safe to say that we are in complete agreement on certain key principles. We reject blurred definitions such as the word homeless being used as a catch-all when in actuality in our community it almost always means drug addicts, and many of whom also have mental illness. We reject being labeled as heartless, as many of us in the group have addiction issues within our own families, and as such we support the provision of well-managed detox and recovery facilities in our community. We reject the enabling of drug addicts through the provision of band-aid solutions that keep individuals in their addicted state with no incentive to break out of the cycle. Finally, we reject the no rules, no responsibility actions of those running the warming center and the community kitchen. This not only encourages individuals using the facilities to not take personal responsibility for their actions, it also poses a threat to personal safety and property security in the neighborhoods where they are located. In contrast, with regards to the planning and delivery of the social support services in Grand Forks, we stand behind and fully endorse the following key principles, which we expect our social services organizations and civic leaders to adhere to. Make sure that the planned service fits within the framework of the coherent overall community plan that is based on creating and maintaining a flourishing community. Confirm that the service is both necessary and effective for the targeted clients. Ensure timely consultation with neighbors that may be impacted in the community at large. Commit to making certain the service is located in an area that will not cause undue hardship on businesses and residents. Commit to ensuring that our public's resources such as policing, hospital, medical, ambulance, and fire services are sufficient to handle the extra stresses. And perhaps most important of all, commit to full transparency by providing statistics on usage, demographics of clientele, and financial statements in addition to a definitive statement as to how success and failure will be measured. Generally speaking, Citizens for a Better Grand Forks want to see the necessary support services such as detox and rehab facilities in place prior to other social support services being implemented. So we aren't just creating another Band-Aid solution that will enable the problem to grow. Thank you.
And our last panelist is Mayor Brian Taylor.
Good evening. Good evening? Okay, I'm just getting closer. 20 years ago when I got involved in politics, I'm not quite as, go back as far as Anne, but 20 years ago, we didn't deal with what we're dealing with now. Community challenges were more in line with asset management, sewer, water, roads, and all of the basic services. The change I've seen over 20 years has been that municipalities have become painfully aware of their role in facilitating healthy communities. So I think that's the challenge that City Council is facing at this point is, what is the role that we can play in facilitating healthy communities when we're dealing with these enormous problems of urban refugees, drug and alcohol problems, housing problems. So I'm here to listen and see if we can come up with anything novel and creative that will help us on that path. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So hopefully everybody now has become familiar with the panelists and the services and organizations they represent. And so this then is the lead-in to the informational question and answer period. I have two helpers that are going to be working, the three of us are going to be working together to try and make this move efficiently, give as many people an opportunity to ask questions. And they have a microphone, and they also have a red card. So the two floor monitors, as we call them, are Ann Palmer. So Ann, if you could stand. And Ian Mitchell. And we heard at the beginning that if you don't have a mic, most people can't hear you. So you do need to raise your hand and wait for one of those floor monitors to come and bring you a mic, so when you speak, everyone in the gymnasium can hear you. Now we do have another proviso though. This is not an opportunity for you to sort of talk about a position you may have or about difficulties you've had with the topic we're discussing, or hurts or anger you may have. This isn't the place or time for that. And I'm sure many of you people would like to do that, but we will not accomplish anything if we spend our time doing that. We're asking you to think clearly about the question you may have for any of the panelists. Work it through in your mind so that when you get the mic, you can articulate it relatively quickly, because we're only going to give you a minute. And our monitors is going to be clocking you. So when you reach the 50-second mark, they're going to be sort of tapping you saying you got 10 seconds left. So you have to have your question articulated, and you have to decide which of the panelists you think you might want to address your question. So when you do get the mic, you do need to identify yourself, what your name is, and how you fit into our community. Are you a resident? Are you a small business owner? Are you both? But what is your connection to Grand Forks? Who you're directing your question, and then what is your question? And you can direct it to one, maybe two people. But you can't stand up and say, I want everybody to answer this question, because then one person hogs all the airtime, and we do not have an unlimited amount of airtime. So as I'm talking, I hope you're thinking who you want to address a question to, the nature of the question, and you've got that sorted out in your mind. So again, we have Ann and Ian with the roving mics. You raise your hand, they'll come in your direction, so they've already split themselves up. Ian's gonna have this half of the gym, Ann will have this half, and we're gonna spend roughly 45 minutes on question period, maybe a little more. Our panelists will give you a couple minutes to answer a question that comes to you, and we're hoping the questioner will identify who they want to address the question to, so you have a chance to think about it. Could be one or two different individuals here, and we'll give you about 2 minutes or so to frame your answer with whatever thoughts you may have on the question. So, I'm going to open the floor now. If you want to have an opportunity to speak, raise your hand, and Ann and Ian will be looking for you.
Hi, my name is Hank Rendup. I've been a citizen of Grand Forks for about 6 years. I moved here to finish off my career and retire. I love this place, but I don't like what it's turning into. My question is primarily for Ann, VC Housing. The proposal that you had here for the 30 unit, which really pigeonholes high-risk people and low-risk people, all in the same cubicles or chicken coops, if you want to call them that. I'd like you maybe to explain the success that we're seeing in Nanaimo, Kelowna, Kamloops, Prince George, and what's happening to those units right now, where the floor panels are being dug up, and drugs are hidden in there, all kinds of drug paraphernalia hidden in there, people that shouldn't be there staying there. That's what we're afraid of here.
The examples that you have been given are not the kind of housing that we will be our plan to build here in Grand Forks. In Grand Forks, we are proposing to build specific purpose-built housing. The ones that you were talking about are workforce trailers. They were brought in very quickly, and yes, they've had some challenges. I can tell you in our region that the projects that have already been initiated with supportive housing are all running very well. In Penticton, our chief of police, our superintendent of police, is saying we can't wait for the next ones to open because we know it will reduce the calls from our RCMP officer. We know that supportive housing works, and we want more of it in Penticton. Kelowna City Council is saying the same thing. I was part of a committee that just got a standing ovation from their community awards night, saying homelessness needs to be addressed, and supportive housing is one of the solutions.
Someone else has a question?
Hi, my name is Scott Davis, and I'm directly affected by this project that you're doing on 19th Street, as it is in my backyard, so I guess you could say I'm a NIMBY. The concern I have is the concentration of people that you want to put into this area. You've got the 52 units that are going in now. I think there was very little forethought into the planning of it, the way that it's been done, and that the people at Bryson Place, in my opinion, have been thrown under the bus because of the location of the 40-unit apartment complex. Now, I'm understanding that you're looking at putting the 2nd Street project onto the 4 lots that the city just bought on 19th Street, or 70th Avenue, I should say. And my concern is this: there's very little forethought going into this. And the concentration of people that you want to put into that area is exorbitant for that area. It's a recreational area, and you're proposing to put a situation in there that...
You need to frame your question now.
Okay, the question is this: why are you coming into our town with your strong arm tactics and insisting that we cooperate with you? You know, you talk about the peacefulness of the community and so forth and so on.
The question is, why are you coming into our communities? I think
Why are we coming into our community and not consulting with the community? Okay? You're going to do this and you're going to do it your way or it's the highway. And that's not the correct way to do it. We pay taxes.
Okay.
I pay your rate. Okay? All your rates.
Excuse me, sir. You had your say. You got the question posed. So, Anne, is it something you can answer?
BC Housing goes into communities where there's a need. Grand Forks, as I understand it, has a housing need. We even heard loud and clear when the floods happened that increased the housing need. We were hearing that before there was any plans to build. We were actually asked by several people in this community to come into this community to help provide some relief for housing. That's why we're here. We work with city staff, we work with city council, and we provide funding for communities that need housing.
Ian, do you have someone? Okay. Again, just a reminder, 1 minute, they'll give you a 10-second warning. Be sure you identify who you're asking, and be sure there's a question, okay? Be sure you have a question.
Sorry, it's a great moment. I don't know what her name is. The person who, thank you. Sorry, I forgot your name.
Diane Darling.
I'm a resident of Christina Lakes. I do a lot of my shopping and everything else in Grand Forks, of course. I've only lived here for 2 years. I've had many experiences with homeless and addiction. One of the things you said was that you wanted to have support systems in place before these people were given homes and places to eat, places to be warm. These people who are addicts do not use those systems until they're ready to use them. Up until that point, they still need places to be warm, places to be fed, places to feel safe. What do you plan to do with them until you get the services, and what are they supposed to do until those services are in place?
One of the major concerns we have is that there are no services that are being offered to these people. I went to the Penticton Homeless Forum on Wednesday, and even though I was one of the few people there that said that we didn't want this just throwing into our community, I had lots of good instruction from people about how to try and go about setting up a successful format for this to happen. And they did tell me, number one, Grand Forks has too many hands in the cookie jar. We have too many organizations trying to set up all of these different functions for everybody, but they're not working together with communities, with people like Ankors, who is going to have the harm reduction. What we need to try and have is a committee working together with city council, with all of these different facilities that are working together, anybody with a vested interest. They also did tell me that we should not have somebody in charge of these facilities on the committee as the head, because they are going to be biased. And what we need to do is we need to try and find an unbiased person who will be in charge of the committee. They also said that they do not allow people in low barrier housing who are not signing an agreement that they will, that the people going into these low barriers, yes, they do drugs and everything like that, but they are allowed, or that they sign an agreement that says that they are going to do some sort of a support service. And if they do not follow that service, they are told they have to leave. They are also locked down after a certain time of night. so that they're not out there in the community at nighttime doing things while the rest of us taxpayers are trying to sleep because we have to go to work the next morning. That's the type of thing we need to do.
Okay? I think Ian's got some after that, okay?
Hello? I just want to check. Yeah, okay, it's working.
I've been on both
You
ends.
need to identify yourself.
Oh, I'm Donovan, and I'm new to Grand Forks, so Lake here. I'm in my 40s, believe it or not, and I've lived on both ends of the fence. And when I find that we're tending to forget that these are actually people, not just caged animals, and the thing is, any one of us can have that additional fallout. It is mental illness. But, no, I'm making a comment on you saying that we're just corralling them and it breeds worse, but it doesn't. I found both through personal experience and friends that we did go to door. Many doors were slammed in the face to promote this, but also when these people are together, they actually will govern each other and say, don't ruin it for the rest of us. And you'll have one or two transients, whatever you want to call them, say keep it down, and they'll govern them as one on their own out in the neighborhood, causing mayhem, as you guys put it. So they kind of support themselves too, and they are still people.
Okay, thank you. You didn't have a question. We want to keep this to question. Okay, someone over here?
Oh, my name is Frank Schlick, I live in Grand Forks. So I got a question for Brian Taylor. So like you said 20 years ago, it was considered you guys weren't involved in social services. So the province of British Columbia is responsible for social services. So why all of a sudden this community decide they need to take this over? It's kind of, it's vacant and unfair because if the province of British Columbia takes over social services and we realize there's problems with drug addiction, alcohol or whatever, it makes it kind of a uniform policy over the whole province. But all of a sudden, if cities start taking this over, all of a sudden maybe it's more favorable in one area than it is the other. So the perception of the citizens that we're making it like a nicer place for people that have problems, and we have a disproportionate share of the burden. So why is it that the city of Grand Forks all of a sudden decide they need to take over this, and why doesn't the city just look after this? Thanks.
Thank you, Frank. The city is not taking over social services. I think what we have shown that we can do is to bring political pressure on the people who make the decisions around money so that we can get those services provided in our community. So, supporting this event with a $500 donation from the city was probably the first that I can see of a direct output of money, although we are impacted by the problems that are faced by law enforcement, by our licensing departments. There are hidden costs for us. But no, we do not want to run the services. Our job is to make sure that we get them in our town, and if we're not, to get out there and get our share of that kind of money. We know where the problems lie. It is drug treatment, it is mental health, as much as any other factor, or maybe even more than any other factor. So in order for anything in terms of housing to be successful, those support services have to be there, and we as council need to fight for them.
Anyone else with a question? Please raise your hand. Oh, you'll be next, okay? You're actively trying to get on.
Hello.
Okay.
My name is Michelle Suppressi. I am co-chair of the Boundary Women's Coalition, and I'm also a resident in Area D for 30 years. And my question is for Diana, and I am just wondering if part of your organization's mandate is to address the homelessness in addition to protecting residents and business owners. And I'm also wondering if there are plans to include evidence-based best practices for how best to support this population, people who are struggling and having difficulty with finding housing and addiction problems, etc. Thank you.
The Citizens for Grand Forks knows that there is a need for these facilities and everything like that. I am a NIMBY. Melissa knows this because my home is directly behind where the community kitchen is going. So yes, I do have concerns about that personally. We all have our concerns about other things, but we know with the community kitchen, it's going where it's going. So it's very important that we make it a success. So we're going to help work with Melissa, with Whispers of Hope, to try and make it a success. I don't have all the answers for you. Citizens for a Better Grand Forks is just a bunch of people trying to get answers. That's why we asked for this meeting tonight, so that we can find solutions from the community that we can all work towards. We have to start, instead of fighting on Facebook or in other areas, we have to start working together, finding common ground, whether it's just one thing that we have right now, and working outwards from there so that we can all start feeling like we're all being included in everything. But we don't have all the answers. We are just starting to learn about everything that's going on because in the past, we've just let other people deal with it, and we've let the experts deal with what they're dealing with. So unfortunately, I can't answer all your questions, but please keep coming to us to give your solutions, and that's what we want to do. But we do want to work with, not against.
Hello everyone, my name is Pamela Kennedy. I guess to sum it up, like it or not, I have been labeled Queen of NIMBYs. This question is for Louise. Louise, you stepped up in place of Catherine Speechley for the Warming Center. So I haven't met you, nor have I talked to you. My question is to you, is now that Whisper of Hope is stepping away from the Warming Center, and as far as I know, actually today was supposed to be D-Day for that, unless that's changed, but hey, we don't know anything. But, Louise, who is the umbrella board? Who's the board of directors now? Who's on the board for the Warming Center?
So the Warming Center operates under the board of Whispers of Hope. It will continue to operate under the board of Whispers of Hope at least until the end of June. That will be after our AGM, and that will give time, which is May 15th, by the way, that will give time for the new board to determine whether or not they can continue the administrative services of the Warming Center. And I just want to say that the subcommittee of the Warming Center wasn't just a bunch of people who got together and decided, hey, we're going to do this. It was well thought out. The people that we asked to assist on the Warming Center, we asked some of our clergy community, we asked mental health and addictions, we had representation at almost every meeting from the city of Grand Forks when they were available. We had a retired lawyer. We had asked the RCMP, although they were apologetic each time something came up and they weren't able to come. So also, yeah, mental health and addiction, I don't know if we mentioned that one. So it wasn't just a bunch of people who really know nothing. We did ask the experts in our community to come and be a part of our advisory.
Can we get a mic to her? Follow-up question.
On? Sorry, Louise. And I don't believe you actually answered my question, so I'm going to ask again. Okay. With every decision that the Warming Center and, BC Housing right now does affect the whole community, right down to the children that I see walk past my house. I have been since December 17th, 2018, been asking for direct transparency. I asked you clearly, and I'll ask you again, and I'm sorry for being vocal, but I want answers, and that's why I'm here today. Who is on the board of directors board with the Warming Center? Because I'm sorry, Melissa, you have done a run. Actually, you're an awesome speaker. I would like to talk to you one day. But everyone's been blaming Whisper of Hope. What is happening with you? Two different entities here. Whisper of Hope, I wish you luck. Warming Center, I want answers.
Well, without specific names, I told you that we had a representative from mental health.
No.
We had,
Mike, I'm loud enough, I don't need a mic.
No, just hold it. Is it reasonable for you to give those names, or is your organization not prepared to share it this time?
My state is at
Just hold.
all right, on our subcommittee was Brian Taylor with hold it. These were an advisory, and this was people who came to our meetings. They had no decision-making power, really. They had no...
Okay, I'm just gonna, for 1 second, there is a guideline on there that says no heckling. These folks up here are here to try to answer questions as best they can. A question was answered and someone's attempting to answer it.
Thank you, Ian. Again, this will break down very quickly if people are not allowed to speak. Don't have to agree with what they're saying, but everybody has to have an opportunity to speak with a quiet gymnasium, and so their words can be heard. Heckling is not going to be a solution here.
Brian Taylor and Kathy Corlett came from the city of Grand Forks, and that was for transparency so they could relay back to the city. Doug Dunbar from Gospel Chapel, Suzanne Lee from Mental Health and Addictions, Al Peterson, a retired lawyer, and Catherine Speechley was the other one, and myself.
Can I ask for clarification?
Claudette.
I'm sorry. I'm still confused because I believe that what Pamela actually asked was who was actually on the board, but you're telling us about people negotiating.
She asked about the Warming Center. The Warming Center was a subcommittee. They were not, it was not a board. It was a subcommittee running under the board of Whispers of Hope.
Not when it first started.
Yes, it always has been.
Okay, I think we have another question over here.
We're going to move on.
I'm Russ Ward, and I live in the community, have for many years. And my question's for Ann Howard. We say supportive housing in terms of second street development. What are the supports that your organization provides or wants? And if we do not have the proper supports these people need, what are we doing to address that?
So in supportive housing, it's pretty standard that we contract with a local provider to provide the services. We provide them funding so that they have the staff to meet the needs of the individuals that are in their housing. So each individual will have different needs, and the support level and support services comes from the supportive provider. So we provide and guarantee that funding for them. So it involves support in getting into wellness programs, whether that be a choice of getting into some type of treatment. It could mean that they're getting hooked up with some employment services. It could mean that they're getting some services from mental health and addiction. So there's a number of kinds of services, and sometimes it's a matter of having a safe place so that they can just get their lives together, and they don't even need any services above that. All they need is a bed to sleep in, a bathroom to use, and some coffee in the morning, And you know what? Their lives are changed. And it's incredible, and I've seen it happen over and over again.
Do you have a follow-up question?
For the people who are chronically hard to house, they have different supportive needs. And it's nice to have a facilitator in town to get them organized towards those needs. But if we don't have what they need in this community, what happens then?
I hear over and over that communities are stretched for resources in communities, and it's true. Across the province, more services are required. I think as BC Housing, we work with our providers, and we know the services that are provided throughout our region. We also work very, very closely with health, the Interior Health Unit. And in that, I would say that I am more hopeful than ever that we have a closer relationship and they are responding to the needs of the people in supportive housing. And because we have that larger network, we have more options, but it's not perfect. It's not perfect. Does this town have every service that they need to support every person that's here? Probably not. But are those people going to leave because there's no supportive housing here? Not likely. They're going to continue to be in your community, whether there's housing or not. And if there's housing, at least there's a chance of them getting some services.
I know from Ankors would like to offer some words on this question as well.
I just want to add to what Anne has spoken to. So Ankors is a multi-dimensional harm reduction-based nonprofit, and we do a lot of work throughout the region to offer a lot of the services that Anne is talking about. So in Nelson, for example, we have a support recovery program, which is pretty much what you're speaking to. It's a program that is staffed with knowledgeable, trained staff 24/7 that are life skills workers and trained in addictions and mental health to actually work alongside these individuals who are chronically hard to house, so that they have a support system and direct connection to all of the various services. And I can speak on behalf of Ankors that if you do not have the services that you need here, it is our mandate to help provide those services or bring training or other individuals into the community to provide those services.
My name's Rick Hines. I think the right person for this question is the mayor. Obviously, sitting here, and I've lived in Grand Forks for 7 and a bit years now, and I have seen this issue keep going around and around and around. We go from highs where everybody's worried about whispers and some people living across the creek, and we have to the lows where we've got now people not wanting affordable housing and provided housing in their backyard. So sitting here tonight are a number of people representing a number of organizations which all provide a service. Within this group in the audience are a number of people that have all kinds of questions about very specific services or needs. So my question to the mayor is, if the city is truly engaged in this and wants to take a leadership role, how are you going to coordinate this? Would you identify someone or a committee or an individual that's going to kind of be the go-to person? Someone who will need to make some tough decisions as we move ahead here with housing, other services. So if it's the city, how are you going to do it?
To speak to the support services, we not only are looking at our need for services from RCMP, from mental health, from interior health, all of those wraparound services are part of what we need to make this successful. I also have to say that BC Housing's budget for support services for the two programs, 2nd Street and 19th Street, is almost $2 million a year. So there's a lot of that support too that we're going to see plugged into these services. As far as 8 years ago when we started this, there was only one person out there. When we first started operating out of a church locally here behind the Overway, it was called, we actually had one person. So in 8 years, we've moved from that to what you can see now, which is a far larger number of people in our community needing help. How are we going to move forward with this? I think one of the roles the city can play at this point is not to form more committees, but to take on the responsibility ourselves of community planning. We have an official community plan. We have various kinds of zoning. And what we're finding is that our zoning definitions are not really identifying what we're planning in today's market to do with social housing. So we've gone back to our staff at City Hall and said, one of the real jobs here that we can do to make sure that we deal with this as we move down the road is that we need to define where in this community we want to change the official community plan, and then to look at the zoning that would follow that. Those are not easy things to do when you realize all of the complexities of what we're facing here in terms of people and their reaction to these services. So those are the best things at this point that I can see doing that are basically looking down the road, not just reacting to the immediate situation.
Hello, my name is Dan Perkins. I'm a citizen. We live in Grand Forks. I have kids here. I have a couple of questions. The first would be, do we know how many homeless people are actually from Grand Forks that live in Grand Forks? Mr. Taylor?
Who are you directing that to?
To whoever can answer it. I don't, yeah.
I can answer that in terms of over the last number of years, we've looked at about 70% of the people that actually have roots in our community. So not identifying the total numbers, but that's fairly consistent, that about 70-75% of the people that we're seeing in that category.
What's the actual number then? 70% of what? Like, is there 10? Is there 100? Is there,
It depends how you define that population. If we're looking at risk of losing their housing, the numbers go way up. If we're looking at actual critical people who have no place today, combined with the flood
That's
recovery.
what I'd like to know, is the critical number that don't have a place to sleep tonight. How many of them are out there that are from Grand Forks, that live in Grand Forks? Has there ever been I don't want to be argumentative, I just want to...
And I can't be any clearer on it, I'm sorry.
So 70% of whatever number. Now, my second question was, what's the final iteration of the BC housing that's going on the old Grand Forks hotel site? How many units is that? How many people will have no barrier housing there? And if we don't fill that from people who are in Grand Forks, where are those people going to come from?
I have no doubt that those beds will be filled very quickly, because I think the fact that BC Housing has moved this model to be a one-bedroom rather than a studio makes it far more attractive. But let me clarify where we're at with the 2nd Street project. Council did announce publicly a few days ago that we are in negotiations with BC Housing to switch the program from 2nd Street to, we'll call it 70th Street, which is behind the current development. What's going on there at this point is the negotiations are proceeding, but we will not be signing a final deal on that until we go to the public and explain the situation in terms of the negotiations with BC Housing and have an open community vote on it. So we're going to have a public meeting to deal with zoning and to deal with the project moving before we make a final decision on it. That I think has to be clear, that we want to set that example, that we're not making a final decision on that switch until we've heard from the community in a public hearing.
Okay, so sorry to cut you off, but I still haven't... Has there been a census on the homeless population? I mean, we're putting in $2 million a year to the homeless population, but we don't know how many are actually from Grand Forks that are, natural Grand Forks habitat people. What I'm concerned about is that our beautiful city is now going to shoulder the burden of the entire region for people who need no barrier housing.
Okay.
See what I'm saying, Brian?
So I have a large region. It goes from Williams Lake all the way down to the border and over to Princeton, Lillooet, over to the Kootenays, out to the Alberta border, up to Clearwater. I will tell you that every one of the communities that I work with that are in my region ask the same question. How come there's so many homeless people in my community? Where are they all coming from? They must be coming from somewhere else. All of the communities ask that same question. And the reality is, the economics of each of those communities has, over time, made it such that there are more homeless people in those communities. And we are seeing an increase in homelessness all across the province. This is not a Grand Forks issue. It is a provincial issue, and we're dealing with it all over. So,
no, just a minute. You had your turn. I know. So we're done. You got to move on. Other people deserve airtime. We'll finish answering this question, and then we got to give other people a chance. Are you not listening?
I will just say that this community has not had an official count, if you've asked that. What we have relied on are the numbers in this community that people have identified as people using the services and have identified as homeless to a professional in this community. And so we are looking at those numbers. They are very high. And they are people that live and don't even want to be identified as homeless because that gives them a stigma that other people don't want, that they feel uncomfortable with. And so there are more people probably here than you think. And in all of our communities where we have done the official counts, if you want to call it that, we always see about 80 to 90% are homegrown, if you want to call it. And the others have come because of some type of connection into the community. They might have a friend, they might have an aunt, they might have some other connection to the community. So there's always a reason why people come to a community. It's not just because Grand Forks is a great place to live, although you know it is. That's not why people come here. And it's not people coming here because you have so many services. You've already said you don't have any services. So it's people that have some type of connection to this community.
Just a minute. Joseph wants to participate in this response as well.
Yeah, I just want to add to what Anne is speaking about. So what she's referring to is called the point-in-time count. It's a provincial initiative to identify those citizens we would consider homeless or at risk of homeless, or what we call hidden homeless. So these are people that might be couch surfing or staying with friends. To my knowledge, there hasn't been one conducted in this community. It takes a lot of organization and a team of volunteers and an inter-agency effort to try and capture all of these individuals. It takes place over a 24-hour period, and then that information is relayed to groups like BC Housing and up even further to like the federal and provincial governments as well. So that would be my recommendation, that perhaps Grand Forks needs some support in getting organized for a point-in-time count.
I'd like to just say one thing quickly here. I know I'm the mic girl, but I'd like to say something. West Kelowna just announced, and there's 33,000 plus people in West Kelowna. They just announced that they did their count, and their count is 72 homeless people. Now you're telling me that in our little sleepy town of under 4,000 people, we've got 60 plus? Somebody's numbers are not matching up, or else I'm thinking West Kelowna is lying.
My name is Brian Fletcher. I'm a business owner on Central Avenue in the West End, and I'm not sure who this question could be directed at. It could be Louise, Melissa, Mr. Mayor, or Anne. But we all know the circumstances that surrounded the old Whispers of Hope location on Riverside Avenue. And my question is, like the tent city that was there for ages, along with the free-for-all fencing of stolen goods. My question to the panel is, what assurances does this community have with the new location of the kitchen of Whispers of Hope, the same scenario won't develop?
Thank you for that question. I think there are a lot of circumstances that led to that. I think having a lot of things in one area probably added to that. I think being located next to the river probably contributed as well. I've lived in this community for quite a few years, probably almost 16. And as far as I understand, there's always been issues with people camping in along that area and in along the riverbanks. I know that Beth's did a really great job. Beth's was the emergency weather shelter. Unfortunately, when they were in operation, they only did extreme weather, so I'm pretty sure from around November to April, and they only operated 12 hours out of a day. Now, people need to be in from the elements for more than just 12 hours in order to have any sort of quality of life. And I think it led to a lot of loitering and hanging around and perhaps even some entitlement around the location. I think even law enforcement and bylaw enforcement at the time had talked about how difficult it is to police an area that is under provincial regulation. That was something that, you know, depending on where the river is, you've got an area, kind of a no-go zone where people can't necessarily police it, or it's very difficult to police. So that situation, as far as I know, hasn't changed. That's something that we should all be aware of, that is something that can happen in our community, and there's very little repercussions for people who are camping on the river, who are leaving a mess behind. So I think that problem still does have a potential of being there. I think that with the community kitchen being located further back from any kind of river and in a very public place, very filled up, there's very little opportunity for tents to pop up where it is. But of course, we can manage the area around the location where it is now far more than we could ever regulate provincial land. Like I said, our CMP and bylaw had very difficult time with that as well. So I think that as we all kind of are aware of the situation, we can all work together to prevent those situations from happening. Having a shelter year-round in our community that's open 24 hours prevents people or eliminates that need to have to camp along the river and to create that sort of environment. So I think we're not actually seeing it as much right now because we've evolved into the warming center or whatever the next evolution of the warming center is going to be. I don't think the solution is to shut down these services. I think the answer is to expand from them and to improve upon them. And I think we're already starting to see that.
Okay. Now, we're running out of time. We're only going to take 2 more questions. One, just hold. And there's a gentleman over there. Who's got the mic right now? That gentleman over there would be the last one. Sir? Yes, right there. We'll have one more response to this last question. And then we're going to move to the next phase of our agenda. You go ahead and answer the question. You want to respond? No? No? You're good? Okay.
My name's Chris Hammett. I live in the city and I work downtown. I don't think there's anybody here opposed to supplying housing or providing housing for the homeless, and I think that line has been blurred, that term has been blurred. There's a lot of people that are low income, that are in desperate situations, that are couch surfing or at risk of losing their homes. I think the opposition is with the drug addicts that seem to be at the warming shelter and that were hanging out at Whispers of Hope, that are robbing from the businesses downtown, in people's backyards, in their houses, breaking in and stealing, and there's been assaults. Those are the people. There's about 12 really hardcore people in town that are creating a big issue for everybody. But to say we don't want to have housing for homeless is just ridiculous. I want to know if you're putting up a 32-unit, 1-bedroom facility that's supportive for the hard to house, how are you going to blend those people in with truly low-income people, mothers, single mothers, seniors? How do you think that they're going to live in that environment when they've got drug addicts and thieves?
in this housing, each person will have their own suite. Each person will be responsible for their own unit. Just like you are in your house, somebody else lives next door. We have supportive housing. We have supportive housing that operates throughout the province. They're right next door to seniors. They're right next door to schools. They're right next door to daycares. They're right next door to single-family homes. And so, yes, they can coexist. It is dependent on our operator to make sure that the relationships are solid, that the behaviors in the housing are appropriate. One of the things that was said earlier is that each person in this housing will sign a program agreement. Each person will be expected to have a certain level of appropriate behavior, and when that is violated, other options have to be found. And so it's not a free-for-all. It's not even like a shelter. It is supportive housing. And housing is different than a shelter, and it is suitable for any area in town. And we've proven that over and over.
Sorry, the next question was just answered, so this lady's been trying to ask a question, so he passed it.
Thank you, whoever did that. I'm Stephanie Pruitt, and Melissa, this question is for you. My business is your closest neighbor. You and the soup kitchen and I will be sharing the raised sidewalk kitty corner from Selkirk College. So I'd like to know how many people you anticipate serving at your breakfast and at your lunch, as well as what you anticipate as far as being able to enforce people congregating, as you mentioned earlier. And I'd like to hear some details about that, please. Thank you.
Yes, I can really only speak to a lot of what we experienced in our previous location. At that point, we saw a really diverse clientele. I mean, just as diverse as the people in this room or as in our community. So sure, there perhaps are people with a criminal background or whatever else. And just like any other public space, people are free to come in and they are free to behave themselves. And we do have posted rules. We don't really tolerate even inappropriate discussions or any sort of threatening behavior, even if it's not physically threatening, if they're vocally threatening. That's not something we want. We want to have a safe environment for everybody to be in. So I think that's where we want to try and differentiate that it's an inclusive environment. So yes, you're going to get all types there and some that maybe perhaps people don't like. But if they're free to walk the streets, they're free to walk in and behave themselves. One of the things that we tend to do is have, of course, staff and volunteers monitoring the space to ensure that that is upheld and that the rules are there. We also are going to be including surveillance so that not only can we be providing more insight for our operations during the day, but we can hopefully be providing some more protection and surveillance for that corner of the neighborhood that is lacking that right now. I know some people have expressed to us that, that the neighborhood's going to get worse or that there already is an unsavory element in the neighborhood, and how are we going to address that? And I think our community is always going to struggle with these variances. There's going to be people who break the law. There's going to be people who indulge in intoxicants. This is going to be a factor. So I think we all try to address that as best as possible. We're working with professionals. We're connecting people with community resources in terms of how to seek help. And really, we're just providing them an opportunity to get better and to interact with others in the community who want to be.
And how many people do you anticipate serving?
Thank you so much. We can see quite the variance. I've seen anywhere from 20 meals in a day to 60 meals in a day. We've also held in the past a couple of events where there was unfortunately a death. And so we held a bit of a service for people, and we saw over 100 people for those kinds of instances. I don't know if that is something that we would carry on or if we would seek another venue for that. Our capacity in that location on 5th Street is 30 people at most, and that includes our volunteers and staff. So we will have seating for about 25. we do tend to see people come and go. Some folks will come, utilize our continental style breakfast, load up and go to work for the day or go about their business otherwise. We have some people that show up for the lunch period, which is from around 11 till 1. And so I'm thinking we're going to see people cycling in and out of there, and upwards of 60 people in a day, not at any one given time. That's kind of where the staff and volunteer will regulate. We do expect that there's probably going to be more people utilizing the park. I believe it's the Lois Hagen Park in behind the City Hall. And so that's also an area that we want to make sure that we can monitor. And thankfully with our big glorious windows that are there, we think we can do a far better job than we ever were able to at the last location where there was absolutely no windows or insight into our yard area. And so I think we can provide better coverage and management in this space.
Thank you. One little last tag-on thing. Will your staff and volunteers be parking directly in front of the soup kitchen? I have noticed a lineup of cars there, and I'm wondering if perhaps your staff would be able to park in public parking, allowing people who are trying to access your soup kitchen, perhaps my services, perhaps Selkirk's, who may be impaired, not able to walk all the way from the Selkirk parking lot or the post office parking lot. Is that something you people would consider?
I think that's a good question, but maybe Stephanie, you need to talk to her offline here. We need to move on. That's a very specific. Sure. But.
Okay, we did anticipate parking as an issue, and so we're very happy that Selkirk College is willing to work with us and utilize the lower area there. And we've also been working with the funeral home, mentioned that they have events, and of course they take up quite a bit of parking. So the few spaces that we do have, we're going to make handicap accessible only, and we're going to improve the safety of the sidewalk to accommodate that.
Excellent.
So, thank you.
Okay, thank you. I apologize. I know there's probably more questions people would like to address, but as we said, this is a limited timeline. We're here from 7 to 9. We're a little bit over, and I want to move into our last portion of our agenda. And already that particular issue has come up during the question period. And so that is a question we're going to first ask each of the panelists to address, if they can, and then we're going to open it up to the floor. So here is the question that we would like everyone to consider, and the panelists are going to speak to it first. So, how can we move forward in Grand Forks to create an environment where decision-making with regard to social support services is all-inclusive, cooperative, democratic, and yet reflective of the needs of the community as a whole and community safety? So, I'm going to ask the panelists to give that a little bit of thought. I think you've seen the question before. Hopefully it's not a surprise. And I'm going to start in the alphabetical order that you were first introduced. So, Anne, you're up first.
So I think what BC Housing wants to do is work with community. Our work with community is usually done with community partners, social service agencies, with the city staff, and that's what we're committed to do. And we're obviously not all from your community, so that's our linkage to the community, and we'll continue to do that.
Darren, do you have a comment on that question? Darren Pratt from Boundary Family Services Society.
So, I think Diana kind of hit it on the head when she was talking about her time in Penticton. In November and early December, when we were having these initial conversations in community, there was an advisory group that was convened. So we had Interior Health, we had the RCMP, we had the city, we had the LDKB, we had other service providers. I think the piece missing from what I heard in this was a community voice. Moving ahead, if we move into the realm of providing service in partnership with BC Housing, there's an expectation from my organization that that advisory group continue with that community involvement, whatever that looks like, whether that's Citizens for a Better Grand Forks or another delegated organization. Remembering, we try to find line with horses building things by committee.
Anne would like to just talk up her last comment.
What Darren said just triggered something for me. One of the things that we require our partners to do when we have supportive housing is to establish what we call a community advisory committee, and those operate in every location where we have supportive housing. BC Housing usually attends those meetings along with our CMP, Health, and as Darren said, a number of service providers. We meet at least monthly, more often if there's some concerns from the neighborhood. And then usually what happens is as the site becomes more stable, things are really easily communicated. It drifts off to every 2 months, every 3 months, every quarter, as people realize that really there aren't a lot of issues to talk about, so we don't have to spend our time meeting. And that's been our experience throughout the province.
Thank you, Anna. Svetlana, do you have any comments on this question?
Hi. Wow, what an array of thoughts tonight. I'm not too sure I totally prepared myself for this. So I'm coming in tonight. I have read the question before, so now I really know what I've got myself into. So I represent healthcare, and when I say that, I represent you. I represent the patient that I saw today in the clinic. So I'm non-biased, and I serve everybody who comes into the Merge, for example, whether they've overdosed on fentanyl, or they've had a diabetic episode, or they've had a heart attack. So I will serve you to the best of my ability using evidence-based knowledge, and that's important. I have to say I've been very passionate as of late to really move Grand Forks forward in a healthy manner. Learning from our errors, but really looking forward into the future, because I think we have a lot of potential in this community. And I've been sitting with our city at one of their meetings, and as of late, another community planning meeting. And I have to say that I think the city is not only looking at supportive housing for the mentally ill and the people who struggle with drug addictions, but for everybody that's sitting in this room. And I think they deserve more credit than that they're receiving tonight. So we've elected these officials, and I think we need to put some trust into them. These are huge social issues. These are big society problems. These aren't just Grand Forks problems. And Anne, thank you for bringing that to our attention. It's not just Grand Forks that's struggling with an opioid crisis, with child and youth mental health illness, with suicide. It is everywhere in the province. Hence, there was a minister created, Minister Judy Darcy, in 2017. She sits at the provincial level, and she deals with these exact issues, opioid crisis. We're the only province in Canada to receive one of these ministers. Why? It's because we have a big problem, and we're all facing it right on our doorstep. I see it in the clinic. I see it with my patients. You see it with your customers. We see it with, I have to say, Donovan, thank you for sharing your story. You really brought awareness tonight, and I thank you for that success story.
Well, I just wanted to add to that.
I just want to honor you tonight, and thank you for doing that. So I want to just touch on what Joe had to say about social determinants of health. So when we look at it from a healthcare perspective, we look at what determines health. So I want to just, as a nurse, it's my job to educate. So this is taken right from a Canadian website. So what determines health? Income and social status, employment and working conditions, education and literacy, childhood experiences, physical environments, social supports and coping skills, healthy behaviors, access to healthcare, biology and genetics, gender and culture. So those are huge topics, right? And we're talking about some of them tonight. We're trying to close some of these gaps. And without proper housing, whoever you are, how do you move forward? Without proper health care, how do you move forward? I just want to say that an emerge visit is really expensive. So you get a homeless person who doesn't have a place to stay. Where do they go? They have to go to the emerge. Any ideas how much that costs? I don't, but I know it's a lot. Why? Because we don't have to pay for health care. Go ahead, Joe.
The average emergency room visit runs between $2,000 and $5,000.
Thank you, that's for one night.
That's for one visit.
That's for one night, okay. So I think that really puts in comparison how much we're putting into this housing. Okay, so just maybe keep that in the back of your mind. So I'd like to tell you a story. Often we begin to understand when we experience, and I just would like to thank you for those who did stay to the remainder of this meeting, because we're talking about how do we move forward. So you're obviously interested in how to solve some of these problems. So this is a case study, and in nursing we do a lot of case studies. Okay, so and I apologize in advance if this touches you in any sort of negative way, but this is what's out there. So 7-year-old Sammy, he's a boy, and his mom just died. He goes home after school, and he's abused by his alcoholic father. He lives in silence and shame for years. He goes to school, and he has low confidence and low self-esteem. He's now a target for bullying. Not only is he a victim, but he's also a perpetrator. 7-year-old Sammy. He gets a cell phone. Why? Because it's something to do, and he connects with that, and that feels good. His addiction behavior starts. His grades go down, his self-esteem goes down, but the phone is always there. He goes to ER admissions a few times, and he's determined he has a mental health illness, anxiety and depression. He grows into an adult. He has no skills, and he has major trauma in his history. So he now turns to drugs and alcohol for coping. He has to move out because he's 19 and his dad is tired of him. Well, do you think he has a proper job, which gives him a proper home? No, so he's homeless. So this is a really nutshell story of a trauma. So we're dealing with a lot of trauma in people who are using the warming center, which I did visit today because I drive by there every day, and I thought, okay, I need to stop and see what's going on. So I stopped there and I met Kim, and I brought my son with me to show him this is part of our community. These are people who live here. It's our social responsibility to take care of them, but it's also our social responsibility to hear the voices of our community and our business people as well, because they are the ones that make our community tick. And without you, we will also struggle. So how do we come to a compromise? And I think that's why we're here tonight, is to move forward with solutions. We're solutions-based, we must be. So I challenge you to come forward with a strategy. And even if it just affects the small world around you, you would have made a difference. So I was just introduced as a primary healthcare nurse, which I focus on disease prevention and further disease prevention and primary health promotion. And harm reduction is huge in that. So I can really attest to Joe from Ankors. So what I've done, because I've seen a need, I'm trying to, we're not going to fix like a lot of these big issues, but what we can try to do is try to prevent a lot of these things from further happening. And for me, I feel like that's targeting the trauma before it happens. Or if it happens, we recognize it and we filter through that and we work with that population. Gymnastics is only an example. We have other great sports facilities, we have other great organizations. I had to throw that in, sorry. This is a nurse and teacher-led project with evidence-based tools. I need to wrap up here, I know I do. So, in healthcare, we want to strive for healthy communities, which means social connections. I think better communication is really required here, and this is the start of better communication tonight, so I do appreciate the initiative and everybody coming out, and I think that the continued communication is really key, and transparency. Thank you.
Thank you, Svetlana. From Ankors.
I just want to say thank you for including me in your community discussion this evening. I work across the region and in many, many communities, and I can say, as someone who has that privilege, that many communities are facing the issues that have been raised here this evening. So what I can offer as a solution, or maybe not even a solution, but a suggestion in answer to this question, is interagency committees that are comprised of citizens and every aspect of your community. That there really needs to be buy-in from the police and City Hall and your business community and everyone affected by the issues being raised here today, because that will become your working group that keeps people informed. It allows for transparency and open communication, and it allows for community consultation when the need arises. So that would be my number one suggestion in answer to this question. I think what I'm hearing here this evening is that perhaps a more formalized interagency / citizen assembly or task force would be a help.
Thank you, Joseph. Amber is going to be our next speaker.
Hello? Thank you. So I believe that the best solution moving forward is more open communication and more transparency from all agencies. I feel like if we had a committee that included stakeholders from every area in our community that stayed in contact and were able to address issues before they become blown up would be very productive in our community. I feel that that needs to include residents, council, business, as well as healthcare and the service providers. So I would really love to see that happen in the near future. Thank you.
So Mayor Taylor, you're next alphabetically here, representing the city of Grand Forks.
I think I mentioned before, I think the most important thing that we can do for the future is land use planning. We really have to get on with that job and begin to negotiate with community sectors in terms of where future facilities of this nature are going to go. The other thing I wanted to express in terms of the question was that I don't think we're a community that will put up with a badly run facility. I'm really pleased that we have a local operator, because my involvement over the past number of years with housing developments here in Grand Forks has been that we get an outside provider coming in. So one of the early things that we did was we pushed really hard with BC Housing to recognize a local society, and I'm really pleased that Boundary Family Services has come forward. This is a local board of directors running a local program. They're going to make it work, and we're going to make sure they do, because we've got local accountability. So we really have the stage set for a well-operated facility, both 19th Street and 2nd Street. Thank you.
Louise, you're the next one, and then Melissa, you're going to wrap it up from the panel.
Okay, well, we want to continue to ask our city officials and our mental health, our RCMP and whatnot, to continue to, to give us some guidance and whatnot. And recently, Melissa, who also works for Whispers, of course, has met with the Downtown Business Association, so there's a little bit of networking happening there too, which I would like to see us continue. I just want to read very briefly what Kim had written here from the Warming Center. The Warming Center sleeps 10 people per night while feeding 20 to 30 from the community daily. We offer showers, laundry, food, and coffee. Guests may sit and watch TV, color, play a game of cards, or visit with each other or staff. All staff have participated in naloxone training, mental health first aid CPR, as well as de-escalation course facilitated by Mental Health and Addiction. We're looking at trauma-informed course that will include about 20 people from other agencies as well. Staff is working with guests to apply for their social insurance card, birth certificates, as well as applying for income assistance. Harm reduction comes to the Warming Center 2 to 3 times a week. Staff has taken guests out to clean up around town. We have picked up garbage under the Campar Bridge, the Black Train Bridge, behind the old Whispers building, and all around NW. Guests have been available to help at the food bank, loading and unloading supplies. People stop in from time to time to ask guests for help, and there's always somebody willing to lend a hand. The guests do chores, anything from sweeping, mopping, washing dishes, cleaning the bathroom, and helping to keep the outside of the building litter-free. We're hoping to rent a space in the community garden, planting some small flowers, pots for the guests to take care of. We provide one hot meal a day that we purchase from a local restaurant. We provide fruit, yogurt, oatmeal, and toast for breakfast, and the guests are responsible for making and cleaning up their own breakfast. Staff is working hard to make the Warming Center a safe and secure space for our guests. And when the guests are safe and secure, the community is safer. Thank you.
Thank you. When I was first shown this question, I guess I probably had a bit of an unfavorable position. It kind of implies that we aren't already inclusive and cooperative and democratic, and I would argue that we kind of are. Of course, nothing's perfect and we all need to get better, but I would say that people need to really get engaged in their community. We have a ton of organizations in town that have boards and committees, and they are lacking people, or they have people on them that are so overstretched and running on so many boards that they're burnt out. And so I would say that another big thing, community safety. I think we've been arguing a lot of semantics tonight, but really, people have a right to feel safe in our community, and it sounds like people don't. And so we need to be addressing that. It's not that we need to be, dividing sides and talking about bleeding hearts and NIMBYs. We need to be working together to solve real problems. And it's unfortunate the RCMP or the Citizens on Patrol really aren't here tonight, because there is a social side, there is an enforcement side. People need to be held accountable for their actions, and regardless of their mental health. So I think there's definitely aspects that are going unsaid here tonight, and that's unfortunate. But I'm happy to see that this meeting is happening. This is a step in the right direction. The last time we had a community safety meeting like this was 2017, sorry. Perhaps this is something that we need to be doing annually or semi-annually, and I know that there's not a lot of funding to do these things, but perhaps we can be volunteering our time and our resources like so many others in the community have done to step up. Our city council meetings wouldn't be broadcasted as publicly if it didn't take somebody volunteering their time and resources to do it. And so I think we're doing pretty good, and we're always getting better, and that's the nature here. We're all here together, we're making it better, and I just want to applaud everyone who's stuck it out this long, because we're going to do it, you guys. So thank you.
Okay, one last thing, Svetlana.
Yeah, one last thing. Okay.
When I was at the warming center today, I recognized somebody, and that somebody was a citizen of Grand Forks who's now homeless because of our flood last year. So I do just want to bring to your attention that these are people who were affected by the flood and were in that margin zone where there was no buffer. They couldn't sustain what happened last year, and they are using the warming center. So last year we did a study in the flood zones, and so I recognized people, and I recognize there are people again tonight. And so this is a fall, but so these are people we're also supporting. These are our citizens that we're supporting. Thank you.
Okay, Anne and Ian, if you're ready. This time, this isn't a call for questions. This is a call from anybody from the floor that would like to address this question that's on the screen about how do we move Grand Forks forward to create an environment where decision-making with regard to social support services. Is there anybody that would like to? Okay, there's one over there.
Actually, can I just say something real quick to answer this question?
90% of the...
If somebody, and then feel free to time me. I probably have a reputation as a bleeding heart. I'm probably a lot more NIMBY than you may think I am. I'm only using those terms just for the, that's the shorthand. I made a concerted effort, I made a decision, made a concerted effort over the last several weeks and months to talk to people who I might not otherwise have had a chance to talk to. And I have a kind of this thought bubble in my head around the concept of Grand Forks Cares. Because I firmly believe this community cares, even the people who are so-called NIMBYs, they want to see people safe and getting shelter and getting services and getting better. And I think the people that are so-called bleeding hearts, like me by reputation, I got kids in this community. I'm a parent, I've had bikes stolen, I've had all these things. I get pissed off about that too. I can be a NIMBY as well. But if I just want to challenge our community right now to just put down the raised fists, regardless of which side you're on, and extend your hand. A little bit less Facebook, a little bit more face-to-face, because anytime I've done that, I've found something surprising about someone I might otherwise have had a stereotype about. So, and I just really want to, anyhow, you get what I'm saying. So.
Could people please in the audience, if you've got something you want to say, leave your arm up, because I can't tell when your arm's gone down that you had something to say. Yeah.
Hey guys, Pamela Kennedy again. Melissa, once again, I'm very happy with what I hear from you. Okay, I heard your podcast, love it. Svetlana, I know you. I don't know if you remember me. Thank you for the service that you provide. Ian Mitchell and I had sat down and had a discussion, and like I said, I was Queen of NIMSY, and I have been on a warpath since December. But at the same time, I definitely know these are our sons, daughters, loved ones that are directly affected. I want help. I had recently had a discussion with Brian Taylor that it actually went well for once. Yay! And we kind of came to the agreement on that. He actually asked if I would step up on board. I said I was too much of a hothead for it, which is probably very much true. But the thing is that between me and Ian Mitchell, we actually started talking about what we could do right for everyone. That means the Queen of NIMBY and the biggest criminal person. Anyways, is it up?
Yeah.
Sorry guys. Anyways, we can do this, we can make it work. Transparency, 100%.
Thank you.
Don't know if this is on. Yeah, it is. Tammy Battersby. I'm on staff at Gospel Chapel as an MCC support worker. My title is Community Care Coordinator. I'm also Vice Chair of the Board of Whispers of Hope. So, my answer to this question is oversimplified at best, but that is a first step that we could take is to begin to use the avenues of communication that each agency has for communication. So I'm going to use an example. You know, the Boundary family, they have a telephone number, they have a web page, they have an email. You know, we can contact them in those ways. Whispers of Hope, it has 2 emails, it has a phone number, it has a Facebook page, it has a web page. We can contact them in those ways, right? Not sure about the contact information for the downtown or the citizens, but we do know some names, so we can contact, right? So I think that if all of us spend more time talking to one another instead of about one another, we can make grand differences in our town, almost effective immediately.
Hank Randrup again. I think one of the things we really need to look at a couple things. Homelessness and drug addiction, the druggies, the junkies, are 2 different things altogether. I think everybody needs a place to live, they need to be comfortable, they need to be fed, but we need to do something for those 12 people or whatever there many there are that rob, steal, and do drugs all day long. We need to do something for those people, because unless we do that, nothing's going to change. And if you want to, I wrote it down here because I don't want to take a little bit of time, but there's a really good article that was put out today by, what's his name? Scott Anderson. It was written in the Kelowna infonews.ca. I don't remember your name from the needle shop there, but anyway, I suggest you read that. And okay, I can tell you, for those people in this room, watch Seattle's dying. It's disgusting. It's happening. We need to make sure that doesn't happen in this beautiful little community, okay? I'm all for supporting these people, but when they're stealing out of my backyard, God damn it, I'm not.
Okay. One last person, okay?
I agree with the last speaker, and I'm in full support of supporting the people that are homeless. Where I have opposition are the people that are addicted and are making victims out of residents and business owners. Where's the support services for the shop owners that's in tears because they've been violated, because they've been broken into? Who's supporting those people that they're creating new victims out of? So that's where I want to know, where are we going to go from this? If we don't have the services in place to stop this from happening, we don't have the police services in town, we're short about 11 cops, how are we going to deal with this? And secondly, I have a question for Anne, when she said that she was working with community. I'd like to know what community you consulted before you bought 2nd Street.
Okay, we're not answering questions. That question period is over. The intent here was to address this question that's on the screen. And we've come to the end of that conversation. We've got a few minutes left before 9 o'clock. And so, just a quick summary of what I heard is I think we're leaning towards a little more communication. We want a little more interagency cooperation. We know that we need to extend our hand and not our fist. And the question is, who is going to pick up on this conversation and take the lead? Because I think there has to be some initiative from a group. And you're prepared to say something?
I am.
Okay. Because the next question is, who is that group, individual, organization?
Got it. Again, I think that we had one of the highest per capita death rates for fentanyl last year. That's not something to be proud of. I think that, looking around the province, I understand that there's some dramatic programs in other communities, and Vernon, some other communities. Are you ready for something really dramatic to address the drug addiction problem in our community? I'm asking. Would you support a maintenance program approach to it? Would that kind of intervention take the pressure off the addicts and put them in a position where they're not desperate? It's something that the community, I think, should seriously consider in terms of a radical move to put a stop to the deaths.
Not here, put it in the major center, not in the rural area.
Okay, I'm asking the question. How many people would like to see a drug maintenance program in Grand Forks?
It helps no one, it just enables.
Okay, I mean,
I'd like to see one in Kelowna.
it's reasonable that we discuss this further. I think there's enough interest in it.
Well, I think the intent is there have to be options for discussion, and I think there has to be cooperation, and lots of groups are working on this issue, but you need to work on it together. So, Amber?
I have a comment or a question. I feel like maybe it would be helpful if the warming center had their guests registered, so that we have a list of people who we know that need access to help in our community, and then we can hopefully track those people to find out if they're accessing the resources that are available to them. And then maybe if they were registered and then they signed in and out, we would understand how often those guests are accessing those services. And then the same for the Whispers Community Kitchen. Is that something that could happen or is already happening?
I think, Melissa, I think we're going to leave that out there. Okay. And I think we're going to leave it as the different leaders of the organizations. I think it's incumbent on you to get together. You need to come to a meeting and you need to talk about how you can tackle this problem as a group rather than as individuals trying to address individual small portions of this problem. And I think someone suggested there has to be some representation across the board, and those are things that I think that need to be worked on. I mean, this is not, there's never going to be a short-term solution for this. It has to be a planned, long-term solution, and it can only be done with a lot of different groups in the community working together. So I'd like to thank the city on my behalf for funding this little evening today and the discussions and getting people to meet one another, because I'm sure there's people here that actually never met one another and that have done that. And to Diane and her organization for taking the time and effort to put this together and communicating it. And as the sponsor, Diane, I'm going to ask you to wrap it up.
Okay, so before we end the meeting, I'd just like to remind everybody that if you didn't get a chance to speak or ask a question this evening, or if you have any further suggestions on how we move forward, on how we move ahead within a more cooperative and transparent decision-making process, please fill out a card at the table over there and put it in the suggestion box. Also, we need help. We can't do it alone. So if you are willing to start lending your voice to any of the committees or anything like that, we also ask you to put your contact information on a card and put it in the suggestion box as well. I'd like to now say thank you to all our invited guest participants, not only for your time, but for your willingness to be here this evening to share your knowledge and expertise in the spirit of openness. Thank you as well to our mayor and councillors, without whose sponsorship this meeting would not have happened. We are grateful for your trust in our ability to provide an environment in which divergent points of view could be expressed. Additionally, a heartfelt thank you goes out to everyone in our group who worked so hard to make this meeting happen, and especially to Michael Strukoff for his role, whose role has been pivotal in enabling this tremendous sharing opportunity to take place. Thank you as well to every one of you out there who cares enough about our community to take the time to be here tonight. I leave you now with the words of the famous anthropologist Margaret Mead: never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has. Thanks again, and good night, everybody.